Okay, hello and welcome everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about distribution, and in particular, I'm going to talk about these two social utility functions, and then I'm going to talk about thinking about contributions from Rawls and then Nozick. All right, so we have two social utility functions. Typically, I would have put these on the chalkboard. So we could think of modeling a societal or a social utility function using one of these functional forms. So if we were looking for a utilitarian utility function, we're trying to maximize overall utility, which is going to be the sum of individual utilities, where this is indexed over individuals or maybe groups in the society. This is weighted, so this would be like some alpha 1 times utility for person 1 plus alpha 2 times utility for person 2, so on and so forth. And we can think about different weights. Maybe they're exactly equal, maybe not. However is the case, we're summing up, we're getting a weighted sum of the max of the utility in the economy, and think about utilitarianism as trying to maximize happiness for the greatest number of people. A Rawlsian utility function would look like this. So we're trying to maximize the minimum. Right? So think about the minimum utility here. Again, we've weighted utilities. This looks a little bit like, so right here, this is like perfect subs, right? So if one of these was massive, that would be the same. If one of these was huge and heavily weighted and the rest were zero, that could give us the same as if they were all equally small, right? With Rawlsian utility function, we're thinking this is like perfect complements or Leontief or whatever. And so if one of these is zero, then the maximum you're going to get is zero, right? And so what we're trying to do is the utility is going to be whichever is the smallest of these, and we're trying to maximize whichever is the smallest of the weighted utilities from everyone in society. So it's trying to most benefit the least well off. All right, so you could think about each of those different functional forms. You could think of what seems to reflect current policy discussions in given country, given area, and to what extent we'd model society using one utility function or the other, and some of the problems associated with doing so. There's some interesting things to explore. The main thing I want to do is actually like tie back from intermediate micro ideas, utility functions, and saying, hey, look, we can apply these things here as well, and it's interesting to do. All right, so the Rawlsian utility function is based on John Rawls' theory of justice. Rawls believes we could never construct a system of justice that's based on utilitarianism. And probably exactly for the reason I was talking about, where it's like this could be really big and the rest could be zero, and that'll look the same as if these are all equally small, right? All right, so the extreme utilitarian perspective looks only at the aggregate welfare and it's unconcerned with distribution, unconcerned with principles of justice. So then the question is, why would any rational, self-interested person agree to a system in which everyone works for the maximum good of the group, yet no one has any minimum assurance about their personal interests? Now, there's something interesting there, especially if we're thinking about this from the Rawlsian perspective, right? There's a lot of other approaches we could think of that would respect the distinctness of individuals and would be likely to be selected in any fair bargaining scenario where hypothetically people would come together to agree on, how distribution was going to work in society. There's a problem, and that's that, well, the currently powerful and successful individuals have more bargaining power that they've gotten by virtue of being currently powerful and currently successful, and they're able to pull things in their favor and do. Right? So Rawls has a solution for at least hypothetically how we could think about this problem. So the principles of social justice suggested by Rawls require us to imagine an original position of equality from which societal rules and institutions can be agreed upon from behind a veil of ignorance. So the idea is you want to think about what arrangement would you agree to if you didn't know how it was going to affect you, right? So suppose you do not know in the original position, at our starting point, behind a veil of ignorance, you don't know your social status, you don't know your wealth, you don't know your family background, you don't know your intelligence and physical capabilities, or any other individual characteristic, right? And given that you wouldn't know any of these features, if you don't know in advance what your situation is going to be, what would you agree to, right? If we came together and would agree on some type of arrangement, what would that look like if you didn't know where you were going to be in the society, right? And actually, you can think of some really important individual characteristics that you might realize as being really important, such as like intelligence, such as physical capabilities, your other individual characteristics. If you don't know anything about what makes you, what would you agree to, right? All right, so without knowing who you'll be, what principles of justice would you voluntarily agree to? It might be very different than what we've got now, maybe not. So starting from this original position is supposed to make society's institutions legitimate, right? If it were the case that society's institutions are those that we would agree to, if you didn't know where you were going to be in society, this would confer some legitimacy on those institutions, right? Only under these circumstances would people plausibly have chosen to live under those institutions. And only in this sense can people agree on rules that are fair to everyone. So the idea is, from the original position, people are likely to be relatively risk averse. We know people are risk averse, and you'd probably be a lot more risk averse if you don't know where you're going to be, right? So risk averse with respects to things like rights and freedoms, opportunities, income and wealth, and social foundations of self-respect, right? Rational individuals who are uncertain about their own future would never agree to bargain away certain safeguards, right? Like once you know who you're going to be, you feel very differently because you know something about your ability to succeed conditional on who you actually are. But if you don't know anything about yourself, you might be a lot more risk averse because of the chance that you could end up in a very different situation. All right, so as a result, Rawls reaches two basic conclusions about the principles of justice that Rawls believes people could agree to. Firstly, that people would have an equal right to the most extensive basic liberty compatible with similar liberty for others, right? Each person would have an equal right to the most extensive basic liberty compatible with similar liberty for others. That's interesting. Secondly, that social and economic inequality must be attached to positions open to all based on equality of opportunity and to the greatest benefit of least advantaged. Now that second part's really interesting, the way that this gets developed, right? So the idea that social and economic inequality is to the greatest benefit of the least advantaged is the difference principle. It allows for inequality if and only if it can be shown that those at the bottom are better off in absolute terms after inequality than they would be under pure equality. So things that are morally arbitrary, like background, shouldn't deprive someone of equal opportunity, nor should the random assignment of talent confer excessive advantage to those who are especially gifted, right? So think about that. Think about the degree to which being talented confers advantage. We want to think about not conferring excessive advantage. So Rawls believes, actually, some redistribution of wealth and opportunity would likely be required to be able to create fair opportunities for everyone. Nevertheless, didn't believe that perfect equality would be completely desirable. Why? Well, because this could reduce the wealth-generating capacity of markets, and Rawls would then believe actually making the economic pie larger by rewarding things like effort and ability with higher rewards could actually ultimately benefit those who are least advantaged. So this is the idea. I mean, you look at the growth over human history and see when markets and market-based systems are introduced in Industrial Revolution and how incomes and well-being drastically rose above the subsistence levels that they had been for centuries before. This is really taking to heart the fact that the question to ask is not why are some countries poor, and why are some countries rich. The question to ask is why aren't all countries poor? And so think about the role of markets and the role of division of labor and specialization to generate economic value. And the fact that, yeah, this leads to a type of inequality, but maybe it's a type of inequality that ends up benefiting those who are least advantaged, but maybe not. And so therefore, maybe we need to think really carefully about some of these things. All right, so the counterbalance view to Rawls, coming from Nozick, so in Anarchy, State, and Utopia, argues that the state has actually minimal central functions, none of which involve redistribution of income and wealth, right? Why? Well, this is on the grounds that this would be in direct conflict with liberty. So the opposing view might say the government's role isn't to be involved in redistribution of income and wealth, but instead the government's role is to provide the context within which wealth and income can be generated. So here's Nozick's sort of famous reply to Rawls. So think of the initial ideal distribution of wealth and income that would be determined to be just according to Rawls. So we're in this ideal distribution. Now, further suppose 1 million people are willing to see Wilt Chamberlain dunk a basketball and pay $1 to do so, right? Or LeBron James, we could update it for today, or want to watch Cam Newton throw a football, or Aaron Rodgers, or if you're a Brady fan, whatever is the case. You know, you could see a million people being willing to watch whatever is this talent on display. So let's see. So I'm a Tom Brady fan, obviously, but not a Patriots fan. So interesting. I grew up as a Green Bay Packer fan. So anyway, resulting distribution of income would now greatly favor Chamberlain, right? If everybody paid $1 to see Wilt Chamberlain dunk a basketball, or Tom Brady throw a football, or Cam Newton, or Rodgers, or watch a LeBron James or whatever, Tiger Woods in golf, whatever is the case, Venus or Serena Williams in tennis, okay, fine. Now whoever is that individual ends up with $1 million, right? So the outcome is, well, customers obtain their money through a fair acquisition as a result of us adopting whatever was this system that Rawls would deem just, and then made this transfer voluntarily and freely. Therefore, any attempt to maintain the ideal distribution inevitably would destroy freedom somewhere along the lines by preventing these dollars from being voluntarily funneled to Wilt Chamberlain or Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan or Serena Williams or whatever is the case, right? Whoever is the superstar, Lady Gaga, I don't know, whoever's talented and putting on whatever is the performance and being compensated for having done so, right? Okay, so still people recognize that some policies involve conflicts between individual liberty and social welfare. Therefore, we're willing to make some trade-off, right? So for instance, quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes, taxes are the price we pay for a civilized society. I mean, ultimately, taxes are providing for public goods, helping to overcome a free rider problem that generates positive externalities by virtue of having whatever this is available for others, right? The free rider problem doesn't generate positive externalities, it's a negative externality, but the public good as a whole has positive spillovers, and the government provides for these through taxes, such as national defense, public good, justice system, public good, schools, public good. And then actually economic theory supports this as well, right? So going back to the foundations with Adam Smith, supporting government subsidized education for poor and for progressive taxation to generate the funding for public goods. Progressive taxation means that those at the bottom of the income distribution pay less and those at the top pay higher amounts. A regressive taxation system goes the opposite direction, with those at the bottom paying more than those at the top. There's actually interesting ways in which like Social Security can have this property being regressive because of thinking about everybody getting Social Security, but those at the bottom of the distribution paying more into Social Security, generating more income by virtue of the types of things that then the Social Security tax is being applied to. And then actually having smaller lifespans and therefore spending smaller time receiving this benefit in retirement. So it's actually some really interesting things, as you might imagine, like exploring not only like at the system level, society level, and then thinking about bringing together applications of economic and philosophical thought. There's a really lot of interesting things to explore here, which is, in some sense, the motivation for the course. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.